Magandang umaga. Very good morning, Manila. It's a daunting task coming after the opening speakers and such high levels of energy. And so we'll try to keep that momentum going. My name is Jamshed Kazi. I'm the UN Women Representative in Indonesia and also liaison to ASEAN. It's wonderful being here today. It's also very rare to have such a diverse group of people in one room coming together. So it's normally when we have meetings of this size, it's sector-based. It's all either maybe bankers or private sector or the UN. But here we have such a diverse group from businesses to regulators to women's association to fintech to startups and media, fashion designers. It's really an amazing crowd. So this session, the panel session, the title is Accelerating Business Action for an Equal Future. I want to focus on the word accelerating because as our regional director for UN Women, Alia, mentioned, we have 286 years journey that we must compress into 7 years, which is really the expiry date of gender inequality in 2030. And all of us have signed up, member states have signed up to that. So it's very daunting to traverse 286 years in a span of 7 years. Sounds impossible, but we cannot lose hope. We must give it our best shot. And so really, it's really about a sprint, not a marathon. And in that context, of course, we have a great panel here. I'm going to be introducing them one by one when it comes to ask them to speak. And of course, the Women's Empowerment Principles, as was outlined, is just a guiding tool for many of the businesses and many other stakeholders in this room. So let me now, we will have 2 rounds of well, microphones, these things do happen, unfortunately. We'll have 2 rounds of discussions, time permitting. And again, I would request my panel members, we are on a pretty strict time schedule, so please don't mind me if I appear impolite and try to interrupt you. I hope I don't. But I'm going to start first with our first speaker, Mr. Chela Pandian, Global Head, HR, Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, Culture and Values, Talent and Learning, very long title, Biocon Biologics, India. So Chela, accelerating business action towards gender equality is the topic of the conference and also this opening panel. And Biocon has been a WEPs award winner in 2021 and 2022 for transparency and reporting. So my question to you is, could you share how Biocon has integrated gender equality and women's empowerment into your business operations, from leadership to marketplace, and what really has prompted you to take on this initiative? Over to you.
Great. My name is Chella Pandian Pichai. I'm not connected to Sundar Pichai. I've sent him a LinkedIn note and not got an acceptance yet. Generally, I get this question. Great. Thank you. I think I want to thank with Kristen and Dr. Moya and Alia. That was wonderful, inspirational speech and insights. So it was a great start for all of us to begin this first day. I represent a company called Biocon Biologics, which is a premier biotechnology company. We save lives. We transform patients' life with biosimilar through affordable access. So to answer the question, we started off with the mindset change, and that's what worked for us. To convert intent to impact, that's where we started focusing when it came to the DEI principles in the organization. So we started off with good to have. I think many organizations have DEI as a good to have concept, but it turns into must have when it has a strong inclination to the business. And that's where we focused, how do we connect the diversity, equity, inclusion into business? And we realized that three P's, which is performance, productivity, and profit, there is a huge link and it's a missed opportunity for many organizations and many countries. We don't directly link it with how it can affect the economy of the country or for the organization, and it has a huge link. And we are a science company and we do a lot of innovation. Innovation cannot happen without inclusion. And there is a huge opportunity if you have an inclusive workforce innovating and you get brighter ideas, and that's how business grows. So since we were able to connect this, and we excelled in the way we adopted the DA practice, and that's why we got recognized in WEP as well. And what worked for us, I'll keep it short. And one, most importantly, we got every leaders in the organization to have a KRA for the gender diversity. And also the gender pay equity has been one of the KRA for leaders. And not many organizations could do in our kind of a sector, and we were successful in bringing that. So it is no more the DEI team or HR team working on the diversity, equity, inclusion. It is actually every leader, because they have to set they have to achieve their goals, and their bonuses linked to the gender diversity. That worked, and many organizations are working towards that. Second, the unconscious bias is mandatory for our organization. Every employee has to complete that workshop before they enter the company. It's not like good to have later. It's like you enter into the organization, you want to start your role, you have to complete the unconscious bias training. And that is really working because that creates a lot of awareness. And third, men for women. And I'm very happy to see a lot of men sitting here in this forum. It's very important to have men allies, because equal workforce is very important. It is not only women have to work towards it, but even men have to work towards it. So how do we bring that change? We have a lot of men allies, and I'm the women network lead for my company, and I'm the DEA head of company. So I think it's important to have more men allies, which we have a network called Men for Women. And there is a concept called BOBO. It's like be one and bring one. For the women network, we have this be one and bring one. And for men, bring one and develop one. Right? So those concepts really help us. And of course, lastly, the women leadership development, as you rightly said earlier, we don't have enough leadership at top. So we have the women workforce. It's not about meeting the number, but it is also about in the pyramid, how do you bring equal workforce at the top? So those are some of the things I wanted to share. And of course, I'll see the other opportunity to share more.
Thank you very much, Shella, and thank you for keeping it succinct. I just wanted to pick up a few points you mentioned. Obviously, innovation cannot happen without inclusion. Also mentioning key performance areas, the KRAs. We have lots of acronyms, but this is really about looking at individual managers' performance and linking that with pay and putting in the systems. Unconscious bias and also male allies. I can completely relate. I'm one of the few UN women male reps, and very proud to be one. So I'm going to turn to our next panel member, an entrepreneur, Nadira Yusuf. Nadira, I know you've been a little bit under the weather, so all the great thanks for managing to be here and your commitment. You're the founder and CEO of Kiddo Care. You have been wearing multiple hats, leading ASEAN's Women's Network in Malaysia. You're a serial entrepreneur, and today, where was I? And today, as the founder of the CEO of Kiddo Care. So my question to you, tell us a bit more about what Kiddo Care does and what this has to do with women's economic empowerment. Over to you.
Thank you. First and foremost, I am very happy, very humbled to be here among the many wonderful people who are supporting women equality and accelerating this. So I feel very, I was under the weather last night, but as I step into the room, I think I'm all fine. I'm all good. So Kiddo Care is actually a platform. If you are familiar with Grab, right? We're a platform to connect parents with childcare service providers, but now we have also evolved. So I'll tell you a bit of the journey. In 2018, the Malaysian government actually launched the year as the Women Empowerment Year. So I was very involved with many women's organizations, right? And there was a lot of push in terms of getting women on board with digital technologies and digital economies, right? So we were working with the government, specifically with the women department, right? And they were asking me, what else can we do for women? Say, okay, let's give them sewing machine, let's put them on e-commerce, let's get them to, embark on entrepreneurship so they can work, at their own time, flexible working and things like that. But I said, hey, that's great, right? But the truth and the reality of it in 2018 was that Malaysia had only about 4,900 childcare centers, while the need was 38,000 childcare centers to support 5 million children below the age of 4, right? So what happens, even if you get women on board with e-commerce and digital technologies, that was still going to become a challenge for them to actually excel and retain in all these efforts, right? And we were looking at women in employment, right? There was at that time only 39% of women in employment, and on top of that, once they go into employment after child giving, they would then fall out. And even then, women who were already working were actually declining promotions. So that was heartbreaking for us. Here we are talking about putting women onto leadership, onto boards and things like that. But if we don't solve the fundamental problem that was plaguing women, childcare, we cannot move women, right? So I must be very thankful to the Malaysian government in 2018. They were very open to this new innovation. So we were looking at, okay, how can we come in and solve the problem of childcare in the fastest way that we could, right? What's the fastest way? Now, one way is to use technology to solve the inefficiencies of childcare, to make sure that we can provide access. We can provide access anytime, right? But the second more fundamental problem was, how do we make the solution certified, trusted, reliable, right? So we must ensure that we must put all these things in place. So I must thank the government of Malaysia to support initially the concept of Uberizing childcare, to make sure that women actually have that kind of support anytime, anywhere. And at that time, our focus was enabling women entrepreneurs, right? Enabling women entrepreneurs. But we didn't know that COVID was going to come. And then, people were working flexibly. Companies are working on hybrid, and they're still working that method. So this works for us, right? So government came in and provide that kind of initial support to look at how we can bring on women onto this concept. Because getting women to work in childcare is one, but getting women to work in this new concept of care is another. So in terms of doing that, in our journey of doing that, I must say we're very proud to say that over the 4 years of our work, we've been able to create 8,000 job opportunities, enabling women as our caregivers. We serve over 150,000 families in Malaysia. And as the need evolved for children and the needs evolve for families, we've been engaging a lot with corporate sectors as well, to look at how they can support their employees through this new innovative care, right? And we get them saying, okay, that's great. You help us with the younger women. What about the more mature ones who are now looking at their own elders, who are now taking the responsibility of taking care of their own mothers and their own fathers? What about that? So KidoCare has now evolved from a childcare platform to a full-fledged family care platform, enabling on-demand services for childcare, for elderly care, for mental health support, for medical benefits, not all that. So that's the journey that we've gone through so far, and we hope we can continue to do that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nadira. I think you mentioned not just childcare, but care responsibilities in general, which is something, as you mentioned, that no matter how much progress we see, that is only tenuous at best, because women are, as you're saying, declining positions, even when opportunities exist for promotion because of that burden. So thank you very much. So we've heard really from two different businesses, one where gender equality really is embedded through policies and practices through the value chain, as Mr. Chella mentioned, and also the model that Nadira mentioned that goes a step further, designed to the core of the business model and aiming to bring a solution to a problem that we know makes women opt out of the workforce, and that's not something we want to see. So now turning to governments and policymakers, UN Women, together with ASEAN, last year launched a policy brief titled Advancing Gender and Business Reporting to implement the women's empowerment principles as part of an inclusive COVID-19 economic recovery. My next panel member is Mr. Firdaus Rashid, Deputy Director at the Ministry of Women, Family, and Community Development in Malaysia, and also Malaysia is the chair of the ACW, the ASEAN Committee for Women, sectoral body of ASEAN. So you have also two hats in a sense. So my question to you is, could you share with us why it is important for ASEAN and its economic development to prioritize gender equality, and what specific action areas were identified? Over to you.
Okay. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and a very good morning. Thank you, Mr. Moderator, for the kind introduction. My fellow panelists, ladies and gentlemen, as mentioned by Mr. Moderator before, I'm not just representing Malaysian government, but also Malaysia is right now the chairman of the Asian Committee for Women. So, in the ASEAN perspective, promoting gender equality in ASEAN is critical for regional economic development and also overall progress. The long-standing cooperation between UN Women. By the way, thank you for this opportunity for UN Women. ASEAN and UN Women on advancing gender equality and women's empowerment in the region reflects the commitment of ASEAN to gender equality. The support of UN Women in the development and the finalization of the ASEAN policy brief that you mentioned just now on advancing gender and business reporting to implement the Women Empowerment Principle or WEPs as part of an inclusive COVID-19 economic recovery is a testimony of such collaboration. Under this policy brief, the AAA framework, the ASEAN has adopted the AAA framework to provide a comprehensive approach in achieving these gender equality goals within ASEAN countries. The first A in the AAA framework is to affirm leadership commitment from ASEAN countries. Affirming leadership commitments involve securing high-level support to gender equality from ASEAN governing bodies and member countries. When leadership at the highest level prioritize gender equality, it sets the tone for policy making and resource allocation as well as societal change. This commitment encourages the implementation of laws and policies that promote gender equality and women's empowerment. The second A is to advance workplace and marketplace equality. Women's equal access to education, employment and entrepreneurship are the pathways to ensure women's economic development and empowerment. Promoting women's entrepreneurship, innovation and creativity, as well as creating gender-responsive ecosystem for women entrepreneurs can profoundly impact the economy in ASEAN countries. However, there are still a few issues needed to be resolved. That includes addressing the gender-based discriminations, sexual harassment and in the workplace and wage gaps. Some measures have been taken by ASEAN member states to deal with these issues, such as there are 7 ASEAN member states that have specific legislation on sexual harassment in the workplace, and the majority of ASEAN member states have ratified the Equal Remuneration Convention. It is important to note that women entrepreneurs are the driving force of the growth in the ASEAN region. Therefore, in order to promote female entrepreneurship, development and empowerment, an equal playing field must be created for women entrepreneurs so that they could harness their full potential. And the last A is to accelerate through accountability and reporting on gender metrics, which is the transparency part. ASEAN has adopted regional frameworks that promote a supporting environment to strengthen women's roles as agents of change. These frameworks traverse the three ASEAN community pillars, ranging from ensuring women's substantive and meaningful political participation and leadership, and women's economic development. One of these framework is the adoption of Action Agenda on Mainstreaming Women's Economic Empowerment, or WEE, in ASEAN at the 31st ASEAN Leaders Summit in November 2017 in Manila. The Action Agenda, among others, aim to address the barriers that are stopping women from maximizing their full potential, promote women participation in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, or STEM, invest in programs to enable environment for women SMEs, and increase women representation in leadership. Apart from that, ASEAN also adopted the Declaration on Building a More Sustainable, Inclusive, and Resilient Future, Unlocking Women's Entrepreneurship in ASEAN in the year of 2022. The declaration is a testament from ASEAN to promote gender equality and women economic empowerment in the region. It recognizes the important role of women in driving inclusive growth and social cohesion, particularly in the recovery of COVID-19 pandemic. Therefore, the mutual collaboration between policymakers, including private sector and the public sector, and the regulators is necessary to successfully achieve this goal. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And again, thank you, Mr. Firdaus, for mentioning, referencing the AAA, the framework. UN Women really is very proud to be working closely with ASEAN, and that's my other hat, in addition to Indonesia. And it can be sometimes a very lengthy process. ASEAN structures and processes are not very dissimilar from the UN, and it's very a lot of bureaucracy there. But nonetheless, when things do get agreed from the very top, it has a cascading effect across ASEAN, and we see that on all the pillars of ASEAN, not just socio-cultural, economic, and also political security. So it's really it's a great partnership which we hope to strengthen. Now, turning from policymakers to regulators, let's look closer at implementation. That was one of the lacuna that was mentioned, that implementation is still lagging behind. Data usually doesn't lie, and despite the power of data, the recent WEPs trends report shows that only 38% of WEP signatories that participated in the research actually report externally on any gender indicator. So my next panel member is Ms. Musarrat Jabin, Executive Director, Securities and Exchange Commission of Pakistan. So Musarrat, to accelerate business actions towards gender equality, we definitely need strong transparency and accountability mechanisms, and the Securities and Exchange Commissions are playing a crucial role to drive this forward. So could you please help the audience to briefly describe the roles of the regulator and share what you have been doing in Pakistan to advance gender equality as well as within the organization? Over to you.
So thank you, Jamshed. And first of all, let me congratulate and commend the UN Women for organizing this, very important forum, web forum. And I'm grateful to be invited to share my thoughts over here and being given an opportunity of collaboration, because we are all here as change makers. So we have to play our part of, the role. So before I go into the question, Jamshed, just a quick intro to the SECP's mandate. We are the regulator for the insurance sector, for the corporate sector, for the non-bank finance companies, for the insurance sector, and we are also the company registrar and the secure transaction registry holder. So with respect to the questions, of course, yes, as you mentioned, data and transparency is something which is very important, and that is actually where the gap lies. Our laws in Pakistan are gender neutral, so they do not discriminate on the basis of gender, but at the same time, they are not very gender sensitive as well. So, but if I, for instance, speak about the company law, so we have more than 200,000 listed companies, and it's all an automated process through which anybody can just register a company. And to facilitate the female entrepreneurs, we've recently changed our company law as well to do away with the requirement of mentioning father's name or husband's name. That has been taken out. And out of those 200,000 companies that are registered with the SCCP, we have over 9,000 companies that are, headed with Pakistani women as chief executive officers. Not a good number that we can be compliant with, but this is a number which we've reached now in 2023. So it's still something that, is a progress. For the non-incorporated SMEs, there are over 5,000 such enterprises which have availed financial facility through the secure transaction registry, and these are the 5,000 SMEs that are owned by women entrepreneurs in Pakistan. We've also made some changes in the company law to mandatorily provide for women and females to be directors on the boards of listed companies. Now, again, this is something which is being implemented by force and making things mandatory. This should have come otherwise. And I know the number of one is not necessarily the right number, but this was just to initially start breaking the glass ceiling. We at the SCCP for the regulated sector have also introduced some gender bond guidelines and also green bond guidelines, and I'm happy to share that it was this year that we had issued our first, in the corporate sector, we issued a first gender bond which was under a private placement arrangement. So these are some of the measures that we have taken basically for bringing in some kind of, at least to an extent, gender parity in our corporate sector and in the regulated sector. With regards to the SCCP in-house, there have been various interventions that we have introduced for gender mainstreaming to bring them in as part of our HR manual, and some very specific gender-sensitive measures have been taken. So overall, statistically, I mean, at SCCP, we are 22% female are there in the workforce, with 24% in the management cadre and around 26% in the head of department level. So again, as Alia also mentioned, this number is, of course, just not a very number that we are satisfied with. But as I said, this is a number which we've reached now in 2023. So there are other policies that have been introduced by the SCCP in-house to facilitate a more gender-sensitive environment and to facilitate women workforce. That includes, a policy for basically a respectful workplace, and all of the employees are required to sign an annual declaration of compliance to that. And as an act of parliament, there is also a requirement for organizations to have, a committee that to investigate cases of harassment, to basically provide for an environment that is free of harassment and violation. But I would not shy away from saying that we still did have cases of harassment which were dealt under the policy. So these are some of the, the actions that the SCCP has primarily undertaken for the betterment of women. But the states, I would say that the facts and figures and the reforms that I've mentioned are of course not sufficient, especially for a country like Pakistan, where we have more than 49% of our population being women. So a lot more needs to be done. But we hope to continue with the reforms.
Okay, thank you very much, Musarat. So really do appreciate your initiative on also easing the, making it easier for women to register businesses, which is often a stumbling block. And also, of course, congrats on the issuance of the gender bond, which I think in Genderland is investing. It's more and more financing going towards women's businesses. Now, I want to turn to my next panel member, Amanda Sarali. She's the lead private sector investments at the Asian Development Bank. So Amanda, we are here in Manila, which is the headquarters of the ADB. Many are familiar with the work of ADB, and but many may not know that just beyond conventional development financing, there is also a strong emphasis or a stronger emphasis on gender equality, and that's something that also you and women regionally, we have been working more and more closely with the ADB. So if you could please explain a bit more about the work you do and from your perspective as the private sector lead.
Sure.
Over to you.
Let me clarify, private sector gender lead, not leading the private sector. That's our Director General. Lovely to be here and to go last of the panel. Amazing panel, right? Doing fantastic work. So I really, really enjoyed listening to you all. So most of you probably know the Asian Development Bank. Our mandate is to advance social and economic development in the Asia Pacific region. We have 69 members, 48 of those members are in the region. We do loans, equity grants, and technical assistance. And we have both a sovereign side and a private sector side, and I'm on the private sector side. So I've been with the Asian Development Bank about 4 years, and I have been so impressed by our commitment to advancing gender. I have this fantastic job where every time we do a deal in the private sector side, we get to speak to that private sector client about what are they going to do to advance gender. And I was just thinking as we were talking on the panel, I think that the reason that discussion goes quite well is because we're offering money. And I think this is what makes the listening and the commitment much easier. So in the last 3 years, for example, 100% of our private sector clients have committed to gender. So all of our deals have gender elements to them, and 80% of them commit to a full gender action plan. And now you need to give me the signal, right? Because I get really excited. So feel free, you can punch me or something. So listening about the WEPs and you know the different intervention points is exactly what I get to do every day. And I speak to corporates. We do like a gender assessment and say, what about this? What about that? What about marketing? So what we look at is women in decision making. Can we get women on boards? Can we get women in management? Will they commit to a target to putting women on their investment committee if they're a PE fund, for example? Then we move on to staffing. Can we get women into green jobs, into non-traditional roles? And I explain to clients that we normally do that only where there's job growth. We're not into firing men to hire women. We're looking for those areas where, I know, so we look for if they're building something new, if it's a new, you know, shop, supermarket, factory, solar power plant, you know, which of those jobs are going to go to women? How do we make sure that women are part of that team in a safe environment? I'm a big believer that, you know, we need to look at the context. Is it Pakistan? Is it a remote area where women can't be safe? If that's the case, let's look at jobs at head office. You know, let's not sort of, we can't change the environment if there's only 5 remote workers. You know, if they're not safe there, that let's look at having high quality jobs where women can access those jobs in a safe environment. So and not sort of singling out Pakistan, it happens everywhere. So the other, so where was I up to? Jobs? Yes, and then we look at policies and practices. We look at childcare. You know, what are they doing for flexible work for women? Are they subsidizing childcare? Will they commit to that? On and on and on. Do you want me to stop? Is it time?
If you could wrap up, that would be great.
So in conclusion, what I would say is that I agree we need to do more. We need to accelerate. I feel as if while we get individual clients to commit to gender action plans, for me now is how do we make this more of an ecosystem? How do we work with more partners? How do we connect the dots? How do we get amazing role models to talk to other corporates? To shift this as a sort of more of a norm change rather than these individual isolated cases. And that's where, you know, so don't be a stranger, grab me, I'll be here the rest of the day, and let's talk about how we can move this into more of an ecosystem change. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Amanda. I'm in a bit of a dilemma. The clock is telling me we've got 10 minutes, and but I want to attempt a second round. So I'm not going to look at my colleagues on that section because they're going to give me the look. But I think this will work if we are able to keep it very short and very precise, and I will dispense with my transition, so it might appear a little less smooth. So we have been looking at individual contributions from different stakeholders and the opportunities and actions that they have taken to advance gender equality in business. But real progress, or in this case, transformation to advance gender equality in the world of work or broader economy can only happen through collaboration and partnership. So I want to turn quickly to you, Chala. How do we move beyond an individual company, the community of WEP signatories, more than 2,200 in this region alone, to incentivize more business action at a more systemic level? And really, really brief, please.
Great. I think UN Women can do a lot, and you're already doing it. Thanks for that. And WEP Forum is one such forum which is bringing people together. And the public-private partnership is one key area which we can focus to bring change. And then ESG is already built the women empowerment and the gender diversity into this S part of ESG. So I think every country is focusing, many companies are focusing on, and that's going to bring a change. That's what I feel. And in Biocon specifically for us, what works is bench to board. There is a concept where we're going and bringing a change in school benches until the corporate board, where how we can bring more women into workforce. This awareness is being created in the school level until the corporate level. It's called bench to board concept. I'll keep it short with that.
Thanks very much. This can work. Masarat, turning to you now. How has the SECP approached sustainability-related considerations within its regulatory mandate, and how has it aligned its objectives with diverse stakeholders? In particular, what areas are you focusing in future that will strengthen gender-related reforms?
So, Jamshed, thank you. That's a very important question, and with a limited time period. I would like to just mention that ESG has been a consideration for us as a regulator also, which is a new, I would say, a relatively new initiative that had been taken over the past few years. So, and as rightly mentioned, also that, partnership is perhaps the key. So we at SECP would have not been able to, deliver on ESG agenda unless and until we would have actually, and we have the support of the UN Women in Pakistan. And here I must actually thank the UN Women in Pakistan under the leadership of Sharmila. She hasn't been able to come, probably Fariha and other team members who'd literally given us their full support in, devising our ESG roadmap and then the ESG action plan, and their unconditional support financially and intellectually. So there was lots happening on the ESG side and is happening at the, and within Pakistan, but they were all isolated efforts in silos. So we as a regulator thought that, there was a need for knitting together, these various interventions and bringing the stakeholders on board and, bridging the gap. So in coordination with the UN Women, we had initially issued our position paper in 2022, and then this year, January, we were able to hold our first premier advocacy session with the lead partnership of UN Women in Pakistan. And it would have, of course, been a difficult task if we would have not had UN Women's support. So to put the position paper into action, we then have, drafted an action plan, and I would not mention more, all of these elements and, the various projects of the action plan, but two key projects include centralized ESG sustained dashboard, which as we speak, UN Women, as considering we are already in collaboration with the UN Women and have signed an arrangement with them. So as we speak, the service provider has already been onboarded, and we hope to have this, central dashboard alive next year in 2024, which will be a repository of all ESG related information on a national level, including rules, regulations, etc. So I thank the UN Women again for their complete support. Thank you so much.
Thanks very much. Turning quickly now to Firdaus, listening to other panelists, how does the ASEAN work with SECs and business to drive more women's participation and leadership?
Thank you for the question. ASEAN member states needs to improve its legislation and also policies to increase the women participation. For example, in Malaysia, thank you. I want to say thank you to Ms. Alia Ayasir for mentioning Malaysia in her speech about our achievement in women's leadership in private and also public sector. Because in Malaysia, the policy of women representation in public or in decision-making levels in public and private sectors started way back in 2004 in our 9th Malaysian plan. We Malaysia have a 5-year Malaysian plan. Every 5 years we have a new plan for our country, economic, social, and also political. Back in 2004, during our 9th Malaysian plan, we started this policy of 30% women in decision-making level. And for more than almost 20 years now, in the public sector, the representation of women in decision-making level or C-suite position in Malaysian government is at 38.8%, 38.8% in the Malaysian government. Meanwhile, last year, our Securities Commission has announced the requirement of every public listed companies within the market capitalization of 2 million ringgit to have at least one woman member of one board member of women in that company. So because of that policy, as a result, there are now 30.6% of women representation in top 100 companies in Malaysia. It is an increase from 2022, which is 29%, and also 25% in 2021. Malaysian government also has introduced a legislation last year regarding the Sexual Harassment Act, which we established a tribunal to remedy this problem, especially in the workplace. So I think these are the examples of what government can do to promote women's leadership in not just public and private sector, but also in businesses. So thank you.
Thanks very much. I was just looking at the clock. Magically, we've got a few more minutes, but still, that should not. I think we should still stick to the very brief time frame. Nadira, turning to you, how could your enterprise support corporates? And you've mentioned this briefly in the earlier intervention. How could your enterprise support corporates that would like to implement, for example, family-friendly policies and practices? And as the entrepreneur here on the panel, what type of capital or investments do you think could really move the needle on concerted action in terms of advancing the care agenda?
Thank you. Now I'm really under pressure because I'm looking at the time. So okay, let me just be very quick in terms of sharing with you what are the kind of efforts that we're doing with our corporate partners back in Malaysia. One of the campaigns, or rather the program that we run with our corporate partner, is called the Support to Care initiative. And Support to Care is actually an economic, or rather a circular economic impact program that enables corporates to support a group of women who comes from the B40, or rather the marginalized community. We train them, we professionalize them as caregivers so that they may support the employees of that corporate, right? So we have this program, which is actually very important if we were to achieve gender equality. Talent is an issue in care. And making sure that we're able to attract talent, retain talent, ensures them to stay, we have to provide an avenue for them to be professionalized, for the job to be dignified, to be highly valued, to be attractive, especially to the younger generation, to come in and work. Therefore, support from corporate is actually very important for us to train them. One of the other areas that we work on is salary subsidies for the care workers, enabling them to provide care services to the corporate employees at a very affordable price. So there are many ways that we look at corporate subsidies. One of them is through our platform, enabling credit hours, corporate purchase, and they can actually choose any type of care service or products that are relevant for them. Because we cannot tell an employee that you need childcare support when you may actually need elderly care support or medical support or mental health support. So we want to ensure that we can work with corporates to look at care from a very holistic avenue, not just from one centric, one vertical, right? So we do that. And by doing this, we also love to, share with you that we can get more men into the care work, professionalizing the care work actually attracts more men to come in, which is very important if we are going to talk about gender equality. We have to get men involved with the paid care work as well, right? On top of unpaid care work. So that brings in men into the platform. So we also look into new ways of us working, engaging with corporates, and one of them is impact investment. And very happy to say that we actually managed to raise our pre-series A from a corporate investment, which is an impact investment from the Malaysia's largest sovereign fund, Khazanah Nasional. And I think, investment in terms of addressing new innovation, right? So I must say that, I'm actually thankful for being part of the UN Care Accelerator program, which actually opened up a lot of opportunities for us to engage and network with our corporate partners. That allowed us to come up with more innovation and solutions for them, and we'll continue to do that. And there are many things that I'd love to share, but looking at the time, so I'll be here if there's anything that anyone wants to engage.
Thanks very much, Nadira. And just taking off my moderator's hat for just a second, as UN Women Indonesia, please come to Jakarta. We need this sort of thinking, and across ASEAN as well. But Amanda, turning to you, just any thoughts about Nadira's ask, or any concrete examples that you can share from the ADB perspective?
Yeah, I would just say yes. I think it's time. I think it's time for us to. We at ADB are also working on childcare and turning this into a real business sector where people make money, children are safe, women are freed up to go to work, women and men. So we're also working on the various aspects, ecosystems, knowledge, building childcare, training workers. But again, let's coordinate. We're all, and I think we're all ready for this to shift, and let's do it together.
Great, thank you very much. So now we're going to have some audience engagement, but facilitated by tech. So our tech colleagues, really to everyone in the room, business leaders, governments, CSOs, investors, donors, from where you are sitting, what will be the one needle mover to accelerate business action for gender equality? I believe there's a prompt on the screen behind me, if you can see it, through Menti, and the scanning of the barcode, and we'd like to hear from you in terms of the one needle mover to accelerate business action for gender equality. Now, while they are doing this, I'm going to ask my panel members for a parting thought. If my head is blocking is it? Oh, okay, so should we just kind of dip down a little bit or duck completely while you scan it? Okay, in this position still, my question to my panel members, and I'll start from there, from my right to the left, and the video will just have the top of my head. So, parting thoughts, the few seconds, what do you want to leave the audience with? If they forget everything else you've said, what do you want them to retain in the next, for the remainder of the 2 days here? Just quick parting thoughts.
I think it's all about policy reforms, actually. Speaking from the side of the government, we really need policy reforms in all the countries, especially in ASEAN countries. Apart from that, we also need education and training, and also some assistance in terms of financial and also how to build a business. Thank you.
Thanks. Masarat.
The time limit. I think basically the power of collaboration is the strongest, and all of us sitting here are actually the change makers. We just need to join hands and take on the responsibility of giving our best towards this cause, and not just for the sake of actually tick boxing some for reform agenda, but with the firm belief that gender inclusive companies, societies, and basically environment exhibits success and really, I would say, sustainable progress. So that's my key takeaway.
Thank you very much. Chala.
Aspiration is to see the boardroom like this, where more women are equal women and men. How do we do that is I see, I feel, I do. right? What we see is what leads to the feeling part, but not enough feeling, but we need to do something, and that do has to start from within. I think all of us have to commit to individually before we collaborate.
Thank you. Over to you, Nadira.
I like to quote Alia this morning. She said, anything heavy can be light if you put our resources together. I truly believe in this. When we talk about gender equality or advancement, accelerating our efforts, it's all about us coming in with a very concerted effort, right? Everybody has a role to play. And I don't mean to be biased because I'm in this industry, but care is at the fundamental, very core aspect of it. If we want to advance women, if we want to get more men involved in unpaid care and really accelerate this agenda. Thank you.
Amanda, you have the last word, almost last word.
I'm excited. I think this is, I feel a great energy, and I completely agree with what's up there. I think it's about commitment and collaboration, and I feel that energy in this room, and I just want to say thank you.
Thank you very much. Your responses also, thank you for the audience engagement. I can't see behind me unless I really try. So commitment, collaboration, opportunity, policy, men need to be involved. There's financing in there, and there's a lot more. But thank you so very much to my panel members for a wonderful session. And I really look forward to a very engaging and productive next 2 days. So thanks once again.
Thank you so much, Jamshed, and our panel.